people will choose to see you the way they want to see you, right? But at the end of the day, if you show up as yourself, you can go home at night and sleep and be like, I'm good, because I put my best foot forward. I was myself, and if you like it, great. If you don't, great. You know what I mean? Like, but that's not going to change the reality of who I am.
I love that TikTok sound where it's like, you know what, it never was. That's serious.
Because most of the time it's not that serious.
Exactly.
If I see something, I'm gonna say something, you know. And it's just like, I want to people to understand what true allyship is and what it's not, you know. And so that was a big moment for me. I was just like, let's talk about it.
Yeah, because you got to put your money where your mouth is.
Exactly.
Yeah. Hi everyone, you're listening to Transplants, the podcast for 20-somethings moving to a new city and trying to navigate all the trials and tribulations that come with it. Today we're going to be talking about being a person of color and moving to a predominantly white area. Just to lay some groundwork, Transplants is a safe space for people from all walks of life, but I wanted to focus on the BIPOC experience because this podcast is hosted by a Black woman, aka me, and I'm super passionate about creating safe spaces for marginalized communities, especially people of color, to feel seen, heard, and validated. So that is what we're going to be doing today. And I've brought on a very special guest, my friend Efua.
Hi, everyone.
My first guest. So exciting. But Efua, can you please tell the people where you're from, where you're moved from, what you do, and what you're passionate about?
Okay. So hi everyone, my name is Efua. I'm from originally Ghana, West Africa.
Period.
But I came here when I was 4 years old. And I grew up in Westerville, but I recently moved to downtown Columbus, which I love. I forgot the other question.
What you do and like what you're passionate about.
Okay, what I do and what I'm passionate about. What I do as a day job, I'm an IT project analyst. And then I'm also a fashion designer. What I'm passionate about is fashion and confidence and empowering people to be their authentic selves while wearing the clothes that most represent who they are. So, yeah.
Period. Beautiful. And we actually met through a mutual friend, Dara. Shout out to Dara.
We love you, Dara.
We love you, Dara. And you will be a guest in the future. Thank you. But very happy that Dara brought us together because I feel like, one, we live in Ohio where there's not a lot of Black people.
Yes.
And it's been, even like the little time I've known you, it's been amazing to see you grow, especially like in your fashion career and all the fashion shows you've been doing this year. Please follow Efua on Instagram. We'll go through that at the end, but please follow Efua everywhere that she is because her journey, she's gonna be big and her journey's been great so far.
Thank
but
you.
let's talk about that. Of course. Let's talk about the nitty gritty today.
Yeah.
So let's do some groundwork, right? So I think we've talked about this a little bit, like personally, but we have both been in spaces where we've been like the only person of color, only Black person in a room. So can you talk a little bit about when you found yourself in spaces where you were the only Black person or person of color in general and how that has affected you today?
Okay. I feel like most of my life I've been the only like Black person or person of color in the room because I grew up in the suburbs, and the suburbs is typically white people.
Yep.
So I feel like I found myself in those spaces a lot. Even like the church I went to was predominantly white. The school I went to was predominantly white. All of the places I've worked at are predominantly white because I work in IT. So, you know, that's already a white and male dominated space. And I think the thing that I've learned along the journey is to just be myself. And I think that that's such a generic advice, but I really feel like that's the key to it because people will choose to see you the way they want to see you, right? But at the end of the day, if you show up as yourself, you can go home at night and sleep and be like, I'm good, because I put my best foot forward. I was myself, and if you like it, great. If you don't, great. You know what I mean? Like, but that's not going to change the reality of who I am. So I think for me, that's what I go into every space with. Like, I'm Efua. This is who I am, and the people who love it, the people who want to be around me will, you know, and the people who don't, and they don't like me or I'm off-putting to them, they'll stay away from me, and that's fine with me, you know, because I only want people around me who support me, who love me, who care for me, who see me as the person that I am, not just the skin color that I am. So, yeah.
Period. I love that. I agree 100%. I feel like one thing that just a lot of people, I guess people of color and people in their 20s, generally speaking, they want to feel seen, they want to feel heard, and that's like something that can be lacking when you're obviously the only person of color in a room full of white people, or, you know. And I feel like kind of like you said, having that deep knowing of like yourself is like, I think, the groundwork of how you can navigate those spaces, because at the end of the day, all you have is yourself, and as long as you can come back to like a person that you like, you know, like you like yourself at the end of the day, then that can help you like navigate spaces where you feel uncomfortable even better. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And also too, is going to stop you from like having to change yourself to accommodate these spaces. You know, I know of course as Black people we do have to do some code switching and stuff, right, to get through these spaces, but I really do feel like if you have like a grounding of who you are, no matter even if you code switch, you're still going to be who you are. You know what I mean? The language might be a little different, or the delivery might be a little different, but at the core, you're still who you are. You know what I mean? So,
yeah, love that. Okay, amazing. And when you've been in those spaces, like obviously you work in IT. So what are some of the things that you may tell yourself when you're in these spaces, and how do you respond? Because I feel like, for example, like imposter syndrome can be a big thing that a lot of people deal with, especially if it's like their first job out of college. This is like a podcast for people who are experiencing that. Imposter syndrome can be a huge thing that might like hold people back from like performing well, or like making relationships, things like that. So like, what are some of the things that have been like going through your mind in those times, and how do you respond to that?
I think that's a great question. So imposter syndrome definitely has come up several times, because I feel like when you are the only person of color, when you are the only Black person or Black woman in a space, right, it's like, I feel like people they kind of automatically write you off, because they're like, how are you in this space with me? You know what I mean? Specifically white men. But then I feel like for me, I always think like, why is it valid for them to be here and it's not valid for me to be here, right? I feel like I have to ask myself that question. And whenever I ask myself that question, there's no valid answer for it. You know what I mean? So I have to shut it down, because I'm just overthinking this, because it's like, I'm worthy, I've worked hard, you know, I'm good at what I'm doing, and that's why I'm here. It's not because, oh, I'm this token Black girl, because my skills speak for themselves, you know? So I think for me, it's just reassuring myself of the things that I've accomplished, the value in who I am as a person is not defined by these external factors that like white supremacy has set, because it's like, I'm so much bigger than that, and I'm so much more than that, you know? So I think for me, it's like, who's to say? I feel like I'm the person who defines if I'm supposed to be in this space or not. And obviously I'm in this space because I got hired, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
It's like, I'm qualified to be here. So I feel like I just have to reassure myself constantly, and just tell myself like, okay, Efua, these are the things you're amazing at. These are the things you're bringing to the table. These are the things that you're doing. But even if you don't bring any of those things to the table, you are worthy in of yourself, you know? So. Yeah.
Agreed. I feel like, yeah, I 100% agree with that. I feel like you come across as someone who's very confident, and I feel like a lot of people in their 20s are trying to get to that spot. So do you have any advice? We'll talk a little bit more about this at the end as well, but do you have any advice for people who may be experiencing that, like maybe it's their first job and they feel maybe like a little bit out of place, or they're trying to figure out their place in their company, maybe they want to like impact change, they're just all the things are turning. Do you have any advice for like people in like entry level roles?
Yeah. I feel like people in entry level roles, I think the biggest thing is just focusing on like, what do you want out of this experience, right? Like, especially the job, you're like, what do you see for yourself 5 years from now? Like, is this somewhere you want to stay at? You know, because I think that can kind of level set your expectations on like how you perform or how you show up. So for example, if you're like, oh, in 2 years, I want to, you know, rise up the ranks in this company, right? So basically like just reminding yourself that's what my goal is, and I'm going to work towards that. And then also reminding yourself that you're still new and you're still learning, and you're not going to get everything day one. And that doesn't mean you're a failure. That doesn't mean you're messing up. That just means that you're learning and you're growing. So it's like, give yourself that grace, because I think that we tend to like be so hard on ourselves when we're in a new space, but it's just like, we're still learning it. We're still figuring it out. It's an entry level role for a reason, you know? And it's like, who's to say that 5 years from now, you won't be in a managerial position and you'll just be like, look at my growth, look at how far I've come. So I think that just giving yourself grace and understanding that this is just the beginning. You're going to get to where you want to get to. And even if you make mistakes, it's okay, because you're going to get through it. Yeah.
Agreed. 100%. I feel like I also went through that, because I feel like especially in minority households, you're told to be like, you know, straight A student, do all the extracurriculars. And so like you're used to being like on top of your stuff, you know what I mean? And being like the best of the best.
Yes.
And it can be hard when you step into like your first job and you know nothing and you're like, I'm so dumb. I can't do anything. And that can be so hard. And I feel like that is a unique experience that a lot of minorities specifically go through because we have to prove ourselves in spaces, you know, where there's white people, you know what I mean? So do you have any, maybe like a personal story or any advice on how you've gone about like unlearning that and giving yourself grace in scenarios where, you know, you're not the best and you're still like learning things?
So like a personal story I had was like last year when I first got into my job, but it was a different role. I was at the same company, but a different role. And basically I had a certain amount of money to spend on like getting musicians to play. And I scheduled a bunch of musicians. I was super excited. And then I went over budget, but I had already paid them. And I was like, oh my gosh, they're gonna fire me. Like,
she said, I'm swiping that company card.
I was like, anyways, let's go ahead and get these people over here. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I was freaking out. I was like, oh my gosh, they're gonna fire me. Like, how did I go over budget? I'm so annoyed. Like, I was just like in my head the whole time because like you said, like growing up in an African household, you know, we think, oh my gosh, I have to be perfect. If I'm not perfect, then it's like I'm a failure. And that's instantly what I went into, right? And I remember I called my friend and I was telling him about it. And he was just like, Efua, first of all, breathe.
Yep.
Second of all, it's okay. This is your first time doing something like this. And I just want you to, first of all, practically think about it, right? It's like, okay, let's figure out how much did you go over budget, right? How can you set yourself up next year when they give you the same pocket of money to better manage the money, you know? And I kind of like put it down all on paper. And I was like, when I saw it, I was like, okay, this is not as bad as I thought it was, right? And then I went to my manager. I scheduled a meeting with my manager and then I brought it to her and I presented it all to her. And I was like, I'm so sorry. I just want to say I take full responsibility for this. And this is my plan going forward on how to avoid this in the future. And first of all, my manager is the coolest person ever because she was like, oh, it's fine. We'll just up the budget. And I was like, oh my God. Literally the way I was stressing and panicking and, you know, like beating myself up about this, right? But yet it all ended up being okay. And she was just like applauding me for like being proactive for the next year to make sure that this didn't happen again. But she was like, Efua, it's all good because we're going to take care of it. Yeah. But I really appreciate you going the extra step to be like, hey, this is what I'm going to do so I don't end up in this situation again, you know? So I think that I honestly like learned a lot from that experience. And I also learned like too, like what a great manager is. Cause I feel like she was a great manager because she offered so much grace to me and she didn't even stress it. She was just like, it's cool. You know what I mean? Like, don't beat yourself up about it. It's good. We'll cover it. You know, but also too, just applauding me and just, you know, seeing like, okay, Efua, I see what you're saying as far as like next year, this is what you want to do. You have the plan mapped out. Like you didn't need to do all that, but I see where your heart is with that, you know? So that was an experience that definitely taught me a lot.
Wow. I love that your boss was chill about it though. She's like, we'll just give you more money.
Yeah, but see, in my head, that was not even a solution. That was not an outcome. In my head, it was either I'm fired or that's it. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
exactly. So, oh my gosh, I feel you. There's definitely been times where I'm like, I might have done something wrong. I'm like, oh my God, they're going to fire me.
It instantly goes there, you know?
Yes, exactly. I'm going to be homeless. I'm going to have no money. Oh my gosh, it's so stressful. But yeah, I can definitely see that. I feel like, I think I mentioned this in like a previous episode, but I feel like in those situations, it's so easy to let like your emotions like send you into a spiral when, like you said, it could be like so, totally chill. Like the problem could be like so minuscule. Yes. And I feel like being in tune with your emotions is so important because your emotions are just like one response to like a situation when it's not necessarily the truth. You know what I mean? Exactly. Yeah. But you also mentioned that your manager, the way your manager responded was like a good teaching moment for you. And I feel like in your 20s is when a lot of people are kind of like, I guess, going through it's like a growing up phase, right? So you're unlearning a lot from your childhood and like what your parents taught you. And I feel like in minority households, you're not, I don't want to say you're not taught the best things. Like, for example, like emotional intelligence. Yes. Non-existent.
Absolutely non-existent. Like, what is that? You know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah. And I feel like this age is when a lot of us are like reparenting ourselves. So do you feel like, would you agree with that? And what is your take on that?
No, I fully agree with that. Like, I think that, for me, like, my healing journey really started like 4 years ago. And I remember when I first like was on a walk, like, cause I would go on walks a lot, cause I would like, it'd be a way for me to like kind of decompress and like just be in tune with myself, right? And listen to listen to the voices inside of my head and not what everybody else is saying, right?
Yeah.
So I remember one time I came to the realization that like my parents are just people, like just like me, you know? And I think before I was seeing them as like, oh my gosh, these superheroes, because they're like my parents, you know what I mean? I just thought they were like larger than life. And like one of the things I really came to the conclusion of is like they don't know much about emotional intelligence. That's why I didn't know much about emotional intelligence. Yeah. So it was like I was struggling with so much emotions and like what to do with them and how to use them and how to articulate them because I wasn't taught what to do with them and I wasn't taught about them. You know what I mean? And I think that that was something that I feel like severely, how do I say, like, I feel like I went into life kind of at a deficit in a sense because I wasn't aware of those things, right? Yeah. And I think that I do have to give my parents grace because they did the best with what they knew and what they like learned growing up, you know, but at the same time it's like I have to learn these things for myself. Yeah. Because if I'm going to be like a fully functioning human being, I have to have emotional intelligence. Yeah. You know? Exactly. So, yeah.
I feel you.
I agree.
Yes. Glad you agree. It can be so hard, and I feel that 100% of like realizing that your parents are just people at the end of the day. It's like, it's very strange. Yes. Because they're like your whole life, they're like these conceptual like beings in your head, and then when you're older you're like, you're just like me for real. Exactly. You know what I mean? I was like, we're all just trying to figure it out. Exactly. It's like, it's a very strange time to be in. But yeah, on that note, I feel like on the other hand, growing up in like a minority household, it can also instill a lot of like great values in you, like you know, hard work, dedication, tenacity, things like that. So are there any values that you feel like you gained growing up that help you throughout your 20s and also like navigating spaces where you feel like you maybe are not feeling seen or heard, or like, circling back to the topic of this episode, you're the only like person of color and you're trying to like, you know, try and like, you know, have your moment, you know what I mean? Yeah. I think something my parents really taught me was the value of excellence. And I mean, of course, if I do too much, then it's like it hinders me, right? Because it's like everything cannot be perfect. But I do feel like they taught me about excellence and how to put my best foot forward at everything that I do. So everything I do strive for excellence because I'm like, I know I'm capable of it. You know what I mean? So I think that even in spaces where people do the bare minimum, I'm like, no, I want to be excellent because that's what I was taught. That's you know. So I think it's really helped me get far because a lot of the times I'm the youngest person in the space, you know. So for me to come forward and be like, oh, I can do all these things, they're like, whoa. Yes. You know? Yeah. And I think that is something that I really feel like my parents taught me, because I feel like I could be out here doing the bare minimum, but it's like, I feel like me striving for excellence has really gotten me into rooms I never imagined I could be in, especially being as young as I am. So I think that's something that has really helped me. And then also too, my parents really taught me about like helping others. And because my mom always just told me like, you know, you never know what someone is going through. You never know what they're experiencing in their life. So it's like, if you can just be that person that can help them out with something small, something big, like if you have the capacity to do so, that's something you should do. And so I feel like even in those spaces, I'm just like, how can I help you? You know, how can I be of service to you? Because I feel like it's important to be that person, because also too, it's like, we can't do this life thing alone. So it's like, you need that help. And sometimes people are scared to ask for help. But if I'm offering it, you know what I mean? Then take it.
Exactly. So I think those are two things that they've really taught me that have helped me like excel.
Yeah, I love that. I 100% agree. I feel like the excellence thing for sure. And I feel like my mom, especially, shout out to you, Mom. I know you're listening. But my mom, she will always be like, use your voice, like don't be afraid to like speak up, be loud, and like, you know, assert your dominance in spaces where you feel like very small or like people aren't hearing you, because the only person who can advocate for you is you at the end of the day. And if you're not speaking up, it's, what is the phrase? It's like, closed mouths don't get fed.
Absolutely.
So like, yeah, exactly. So thank you, Mother, for that lesson. But yeah, I 100% agree. Okay, so I wanted to circle back on like work relationships and friendships where you are like the only person of color in a room, right? And I wanted to talk about finding good allies.
Okay.
Because I feel like good allies can be important, especially when, again, you don't have people who look like you in certain spaces. So do you have any instances where good allies have like shown up for you and like have excuse me, left like a good impact on your life?
Yeah. So I remember one time we had an unhoused woman who was at our facility, and basically they called the cops on her because it was like trespassing, right? And I saw the way that the cop spoke to her. She's a Black woman, and he basically spoke to her like she was a child. And I was present for that, and I watched him do it, and I was just so upset and like angry, and I just couldn't, because I was like, I feel like as a Black woman, I think that there's certain things that happen that we just have to speak on. Like, we can't just let them be, you know? Yeah. So after we left that interaction, my manager was there with me, and I told her, I said, this is how this made me feel. And I actually started crying because I said, that's not okay. I don't care who she is. I don't care what she's done. That is not okay to talk to her like that. That is a grown woman. You need to respect her. And I told her my feelings around it, and she was a great ally because she went to the police officer and told him how I felt.
Oh, period.
Yeah. And she said, Efua was saying that this is not okay. You cannot speak to her like that. Like, I understand that this is your job and you might be used to interacting with people in a certain way, but that is not okay. And that should not be the norm. Right. And so when she talked to him about it, he came and actually apologized to me.
Wow.
And I was shocked because I never even thought that he would even care about my opinion. You know what I mean? And the fact that he came up to me and apologized, and he said, he's like so sometimes desensitized to the job, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I mean, it's not an excuse, but like hearing him like genuinely apologize and sincerely like try to explain himself, but still acknowledge that it was not okay. Yeah. Like, it was just a level of like, I don't know. I was just shocked, and I just felt like that was true allyship to me, because you're hearing what I'm saying and you're like, okay, let's do something about it, because you know that I can only do so much, right? And so I feel like for me, that was true allyship to me, because I was just like, wow, you're really advocating for Black voices, and you're making sure that Black women specifically are being treated equally, because and the thing is too, she agreed with me when I told her that how he was talking to her was not okay, because she saw it too. So she was able to back me up in that instance, and then get an apology from the cop. And then like going forward, we now know like, you don't speak to people like that. I don't care what situation they're in. And at the end of the day, she's a woman too. Okay? Yeah. And she's been through a lot in her life, and we don't know her story. We don't know her journey, but it's not okay to speak to her like that. So yeah, that was true allyship for me.
Wow. That is beautiful. I'm so glad that cop actually like took the time to listen and actually apologize to you, because I feel like that is like, unfortunately, like rare these days. So wow, I love that story. Yeah, that's incredible. I feel like at my work, I feel like none of my bosses have been Black, but they've all been like advocates for me. Like, I recently like switched roles at work. I work at the same company, but moved to like a marketing department, and both of my bosses that I had during that time, when I expressed to them that, they were always like advocating for me and always pushing for me to advocate for myself, and like, you know, giving me pointers, tips, whatever. And that's like such a small way in comparison to yours, but even just knowing that you have people on your side and people in your corner can be such a like, it can be such a like a reassuring thing, especially when you feel like all alone. And like, I can only imagine how you felt in that scenario. It can be very reassuring, especially when they're, you know, non-Black.
Exactly.
Hello, thank you.
I think too, like, being Black, I think sometimes, like I said, some people have those unconscious bias. So it's like, even if we say something that a white person just said, they will not hear us. You know what I mean? So sometimes it really takes those like allies to like speak up for us. And even if they're saying the same thing we're saying, sometimes they're received, but we're not. You know what I mean? So I think that's why it's so important for them to have our backs, because it's like, it really does make a difference, you know?
Yeah, I agree 100%. Okay, amazing. In the same vein, we love our allies, but I feel like a topic of conversation as well when talking about allies is like, I guess, educating people on like the experiences that people of color go through. And it's like it's not my job to teach you these things, you know what I mean? It's not my job to treat you to teach you how you should treat me. Yes, you know what I mean? So have you ever experienced that as well?
I'm sure I have. I'm trying to think of an instance that comes to mind. I think that I remember one time we had like the African American male wellness walk, right? And I wanted people to go because I wanted to okay, so basically what happened was like it was promoted like, hey, we're gonna have the African American male wellness walk, anybody can sign up, whatever, right? And it was promoted for a while, so I'm thinking, oh, everybody's about to show up because it's been promoted, you know what I mean? And when I tell you, when nobody really showed up, it was like maybe like 10 people, and I was just like, okay. I don't like that. You know what I mean? Because I feel like it's different to, you can say everything you want to say about, oh, I'm an ally, oh, I'm this, oh, I'm that. But it's like when it's really time to show up, you're not there. Yeah. I'm like, So I remember when I was a group meet, like a team meeting or whatever, and I addressed it because I said,
period.
I'm sorry, but all we asked for was one day. You know what I mean? And all we asked for was your support, you know, and it was literally maybe like an hour out of your day on a Saturday. And I know Saturdays, nobody wants to, you know, go and do anything. It's their day to do whatever. But I'm just saying, I think to be an ally is to show up for your people. And the African American Male Wellness Walk was really about just supporting our Black men, right? And supporting like their wellness wholeheartedly, right? Mental, physical, emotional. And that was the time to be an ally and show up. And it's like, y'all are talking all this talk, but it's like, when are we going to walk the walk? Literally, you know? So I talked about it, and I talked about how it's hard sometimes when it comes to like, quote unquote, like calling yourself an ally, because it's like you can say so much, but it's like, again, what are you doing outside of that? And I think that I really tried to drill that into them to understand that it's not just about talking a certain way or like, oh, you have me as a friend, so you're an ally. No, it's about actually showing up in that way, you know? And I do think it was received well. I do think some people were uncomfortable because like I kind of called them out, but also too, I feel like for me, it's like, if I see something, I'm going to say something, you know? Yeah. And it's just like, I want to people to understand what true allyship is and what it's not, you know? Yes. Yeah. And so that was a big moment for me. I was just like, let's talk about it.
Yeah, because hello? Yeah, you got to put your money where your mouth is.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that's important because it's like you can scream ally all day and night, but then it's like, what are you actually doing? You know?
Exactly. So. Exactly. I love that. Yeah. It's the one Black friend for me.
Because I kid you not, I do know a lot of people who I feel like I'm their only Black friend, and I'm just like, okay, there's progress that needs to be made.
But let's unpack that. Yeah. Okay. Love that. Okay, great. Glad that you had the courage to do that. I feel like not a lot of people do. But yeah, that's incredible. Hopefully allies that are listening to this learn how to show up, listen to these stories and take some notes, because it's important for you to show up for us. Yes. Because we show up for you.
Exactly. Even when we don't want to, we're still there, you know? Exactly. So I feel like for you, even if it's something that's like small or you think is small, it might not be small to the person who you're showing up for. So just show up.
Exactly. Yeah. Period. Okay. So I also wanted to touch on finding community, because this podcast is all about people in their 20s who move to a new city. They don't know anyone. They're trying to figure things out. It's a hard knock time. You know what I mean? And that can be super daunting when you are a person of color moving to a place where, you know, you might not find a lot of people like you, and you have to like put in the extra work to like do so. So I kind of wanted to ask you like your experience in your move, because you're from Ohio, right? Okay, so I wanted to know about your experience moving to like the city into like Columbus, and how it's been for you trying to find your own sense of community and how that journey has looked like for you.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing that I've learned is that you have to go into spaces where you already like, where you guys have like something in common. For example, like I'm really into art. So like for me, it would be like, I'd go to art galleries, you know what I mean? Or go to the art museum, or like I would find events that correspond with my hobbies. Like for example, there's a dance class going on. Oh, I'm going to go to this dance class, because you're going to find people there who also like dance, and then they also might be a really cool person, you know? So I think that was the first thing. Also Bumble BFF, I think that was a great resource for me. I feel like as long as you're intentional about what you're doing on there, I think you can find great people. I also just think like being open-minded, because I feel like everywhere I would go, I would be open-minded to talking to people, to interacting with people, and they don't necessarily all have to be your friend, but you never know. So that's why I'm just like, just talk, you know, just interact. Don't just stand in the corner and just, you know, be quiet. But I get it though, because it's nerve-wracking to go talk to someone, right?
Yes.
But because I love fashion, that's what I lead with. It's like I see someone with a cute outfit, or I see someone with cute shoes, and I'm like, oh, your shoes are cute, and then we get into a conversation, you know. It's as simple as that. But I really do feel like being intentional, number one, and number two, it's like going into those spaces where you already have similar interests, like hobbies, like if you like art, if you like music, you know, go into spaces that offer those things, and then you can find people who are similar to you or like things that are similar to you. So, yeah,
I 100% agree. I love that. I like for me personally, I played soccer growing up and stopped like in high school or something, and I joined like a rec league this past spring. And I am the only black person on my team, to be honest. But it's been a fun time, like meeting those people, becoming friends with like my teammates and stuff, and being introduced to like friends of friends, and it's been a fun time. But I agree, like being in spaces where you like where your interests lie, because that's where you're gonna feel comfortable, because that's like who you are. So it'll definitely be easier for you to like be let loose and be able to connect with others. But for people who may be going to like a class where they know no one and feel like intimidated or like scared to go up to people, what advice would you give for them?
Advice I would give to them is that I always have to tell myself, Efua, what's the worst that's going to happen, right? You go talk to this person, maybe they might small talk you back, but then at least you know they don't want to talk, you know, but you didn't die, you know what I mean? Your life is going to go on. I think that's the framework I think of. And then also too, a lot of people are scared to talk to other people too. So it's like, if you make that first move, they'll be excited because they're like, oh, you're talking to me. Okay, cool, we can just talk. You know? So I think that also just realizing that people are seeking community too. People are seeking friends too. And I think if you go in with that mindset, you're going to be surprised like how people react to you. You know? So
I 100% agree. I think I mentioned this again in like a previous episode, but like we are all like alone. We're all lonely. You know what I mean? We're all just trying to make friends. And I feel like once you can like get that like locked in your brain, then it's like so much easier, because like we're all in the same boat. You know what I mean?
We're all trying to figure out this life thing, you know?
Exactly. One thing that I like to tell myself when I'm going into like new situations or like the first date or like whatever is like, I like to go into it thinking that they already love me, because
I love that.
Because then it's like I'll show up as like my authentic self, and it's like, why wouldn't you love me? Because thinking about it, like I'm incredible, actually.
Yes, absolutely.
So there's no reason for you not to love me. So
I need to start doing that. Shoot.
Exactly.
Because I already, like, I'm not even gonna lie, I already think that. Like, I already, like, think, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm such an amazing person. Like, genuinely, not even to be cocky or nothing like that, but it's just because I really do love myself. And I've cultivated this life and this person that I truly am in love with, you know? So I do feel like I'm gonna go in with that mindset now.
Yeah. Of course. Of course. Yeah, I saw that in a YouTube video once, and I was like, period. I'm taking that.
Yeah, I'm stealing that too.
Yeah, and it's been so helpful, honestly. Okay, amazing. I feel like we've talked about a few different ways that you can find people, like find community during your 20s, and how you can like change your mindset to go into those situations. But backtracking a little bit, what do you do when you feel like you don't have community and you feel very much alone? Because I want to touch on this specifically because we're entering winter seasons, and you know, seasonal depression is about to get a lot of people, and it can be, those thoughts are, you know, they're easier to infiltrate your mind, like I'm all alone, I have no one, you know, things like that, especially with the holidays, if you don't go home to family, things like that. What advice do you have for people who may be experiencing that, and have you ever experienced that yourself?
Oh yeah, seasonal depression gets me every time. This year she's not gonna get me though, because I'm gonna be ready.
Period.
But I think something that's really helped me is really distinguishing between what's truth and what's just me telling myself this. You know what I mean? Because I'm like, if I have no facts to back this up, I'm not gonna keep thinking this. You know? And I really have to catch myself. Like, like, oh, I'm so alone. And then I'm like, no, I'm not. Like, I literally look at my wall with all my pictures of my beautiful friends, and I'm just like, what are you talking about? You know what I mean? And it's as simple as just calling my friend and being like, hey, I feel alone. And they're like, girl, me too. And then we come over and then we like have a girls' night. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I think honestly, just being upfront about how you feel really helps, because a lot of people feel the same way, and you guys can feel the same way together. You know?
Exactly.
So I think that really helps. I think also just opening the blinds, like something as simple as opening the blinds in the morning and remembering that the sun is out. You know, it's a new day. Like that has really helped me, because I'm like, right, it's daytime. Let's get up and do something. You know, let me not just like wallow in my sadness. You know, let me get up. Also, just like engaging in things that I like for example, around the house, it's like, oh, I really like, I'm gonna play my favorite podcast and I'm gonna color because I love coloring, you know what I mean? Or, oh, I'm gonna learn this new dance move, or just doing stuff around the house that I feel like I've been putting off for so long, but I can do it now that I have time. Because then it's like I'm productive, I'm moving, and I'm accomplishing something that's on my long list of things I want to do, you know? So it's like, even if I feel alone in this moment, when I'm doing all these things afterwards, I feel good because I'm like, oh, I accomplished this thing, you know? And then that loneliness kind of starts to fade because I'm like being productive, you know? So also just hit up your friends and just be like, hey girl, I feel lonely. Like I promise you, they'll be like, girl, come over, girl, I got you, let's hop on FaceTime. Like they really will be there for you. So yeah
agreed, 100%. Being alone, like I said before, is a shared human experience. And I 100% agree. Especially, it can also be hard, especially when you like just moved somewhere and you don't have anyone. Hop on a FaceTime, girl. Or I don't know, find a pen pal.
Or even just go to like a bar, because the bartenders love to talk, you know what I mean?
They do.
So
honestly,
like you can even just go to a bar and just like chat with random people that sit down, you know. I know that seems intimidating, so I'll say maybe bring a book, you know, and ask them to read your book, or even actually read your book, and then people will come up and talk to you, you know. So just putting yourself out there too, I think really helps. And I feel like the first step is just getting out of bed. Once you get out of bed, it's like, okay, what am I going to do now? You know?
Oh my gosh, yeah. I 100% agree. There's been several weekends where I find myself laying on the couch on like a Friday or Saturday night, and I'm like scrolling through TikTok, and I'm like, this is so boring. Like my life is so boring. Nobody loves me, blah, blah, blah. But I feel like when you're in that like wallowing, it's like you have to like think about it. Like, okay, I'm getting up right now, and I'm going to like open the windows right now, and I'm going to go walk right now, and you have to like talk yourself through it. And like even too, sometimes I like count myself down. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna get up, 5, 4, 3, 2, and I have to get up because I don't want to get to 1 and still be in the couch, you know. So sometimes you really have to like just be that parent for yourself and like parent yourself out of it, you know. So I agree. I recently read this book by Brene Brown. I think it's called The Gifts of Imperfection.
Oh, I love that book.
Oh my gosh. Yes, I just finished it, and I really liked it. But the dig deep acronym that she talked about, where you're in like, because it's all about wholehearted living, and it's like where you feel like, I don't know, it's like the book is about cultivating like a wholehearted life and like finding connection and like connection with yourself, connection with others, blah, blah, blah. And in the beginning of the book, she talks about this acronym, dig deep, DIG, like get deliberate, get inspired, and then get going. Get going. And so I feel like I've started to apply that acronym in my life. So like if I feel like I'm like doom scrolling on TikTok, or I'm like, I don't know, just doing something that is probably not good for me, I try to think of that acronym, and hopefully that helps like the listeners listening to this show. But like getting deliberate, getting inspired, and then actually getting going on whatever it is you need to do. Hopefully that framework will help you like navigate the hard times during this winter and just like throughout life, because intention at the end of the day is something that will, I think, guide you through all these trials and tribulations. Absolutely.
And then even too for the neurodivergent girlies, because I'm one of them. I have ADHD. And sometimes for us, it's helpful if we have someone who will mirror with us. So even if you get on YouTube and like someone is like studying, you know, that will make you get up, because it's like, oh, someone's doing something, so I got to do something, you know? Or even just FaceTiming your friend and you guys don't have to talk, but like they're doing stuff and you're doing stuff. It's going to make you do stuff. Because I've done that several times, and I can't tell you how much that helps. So for my neurodivergent girlies, try it, mirroring. Yes,
I 100% agree. I feel like that's why I love going to coffee shops too, to work, or draw or like read, just being in the presence of other people who I know are like working on stuff.
Yes.
I'm like, okay,
now I have to work on
it. Exactly. So yeah, change your environment, do what you got to do, but hopefully these tips help you figure out or help you find community and get yourself out there. We've talked about a lot of great things in our conversation today. And I hope the listeners have enjoyed our conversation, because I know I have.
Me too. And I'm just going to say they're going to enjoy it. I'm not giving them the option. You guys are enjoying it, right?
Literally.
Comment down below and let us know.
Yeah. And if not, then don't talk to me.
Right. Don't tell us.
Yeah. Don't tell us at all. Keep your mouth shut. But in closing, do you have any like final words of advice for people of color who are in spaces where they don't see anyone else who looks like them, they feel out of place, and they're trying to find community?
Yeah. I feel like my last words of advice would be to, sometimes it takes us getting out of our head to really be present. And I think that I know it's easy to think of like, oh my gosh, like I'm the only person of color in this space. They're going to look at me funny. They're gonna, like, you know what I mean? And I think sometimes we have to get out of our own heads to be able to like be present and to be able to see it for what it is. Because sometimes I think that we create more problems for ourselves by overthinking, you know? And I know that I've been in that space. So I think sometimes just coming out of your head and being present, being in the moment and being like, okay, what's really going on? You know what I mean? Or trying to see the positive in things, or having like someone who, like a best friend or a family member who you can vent to that is a person of color, you know, where you can share your experience and be like, let me tell you what Sally did today. You know what I mean? Like,
yes.
Just so at least you're able to like unload and talk about it freely, you know, even if you can't talk about it freely at your place of work. So, or your school or wherever you're at, you know, I think that having that place to come home to and just be like, this is how I feel. This is what's been going on. Talk through it with me. Are you seeing what I'm seeing? You know, just so it's not like you're only in your head seeing it, because I think that can be a dangerous place, because you can see only what you want to see without, you know, fully seeing the full picture. So I think that's another thing. And then also just give yourself grace, because again, you're just a human being. You're learning, you're growing, you're evolving, and you're only going to get better. You know, failure is not a bad thing. Failure is just a lesson. And once you apply that lesson, you keep it pushing, you know? So yeah, that's my words of advice.
100%. I love that. I 100% agree with everything you said. I did want to touch on, for people, I definitely feel like the venting thing, and definitely vent to like my friends here, my friends back home. But for people who don't, I feel like a big part of that is just like release and like getting your thoughts out on paper.
Yeah.
So one, like Efua said, be able to decipher the truth from like what's factual versus like what's not factual. Because a lot of times like your feelings will like Efua said, you'll overthink and start to tell yourself stories, but fact and fiction are two different things, babe. They're two different things. So take the time to think things through. And if you feel like you don't have anyone to like talk things through, I have found myself sometimes where I just need to like talk to someone and no one's available or something. Sometimes I'll just like record like a video on my phone or like a voice note. And just to like get my thoughts out, or like journal, just to get my thoughts out on paper, even though it's not with someone else, which is like ideal. It's just so much better getting that out of my system and into like something external.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I fully agree with that. The voice memo one is the one that I prefer to use because I love talking. And I literally have so many voice memos of me just talking about what's going on in my life at the moment. And I can't tell you how many times I've listened to those voice memos now, going through that situation and being on the other side and being like, oh my gosh, it wasn't even that deep. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And it all worked out. And I kid you not, most of my voice memos end up just all working out, and it's all okay. And it's not what I thought it was, you know? So I really do feel like what you just said, like getting it on an external medium, whether that be journaling, whether that be voice memo, whether that be video, whatever you need to do to just get those thoughts out in the open. And then you can watch it back and be like, okay, this makes sense. Or, okay, you know what? I'm seeing, you know what I mean? But like, and then also too, you can watch it back like months later, years later, and be like, oh, that's where I was at in that time of life. You know what I mean? It kind of like just shows you your journey as well.
Exactly. So, yeah, it's always great to look back and be like, I love that TikTok sound where it's like, you know what it never was? That's serious.
Because most of the time, it's not that serious.
Exactly. But yeah, 100% agree. But yeah, Efua, thank you so much for being on this episode of Transplants. Where can the people find you?
Yeah, so the people can find me. My Instagram is at justefua, JUSTEFUA, and I'm at justefua on pretty much all social medias: Pinterest, Instagram, TikTok. I think that's all I have. But yeah, I'm just Efua there, and my brand is called Baddest. So feel free to follow us and see all things Baddest related. Thank you for having me, Joyce. This is an amazing podcast. Make sure that you subscribe to her channel.
Thank you.
Okay. And then also follow her on Instagram as well, and just keep up with the podcast because she's going to do great things. So.
Oh my gosh, thank you. Thank you. And thank you everyone for listening to this episode of Transplants. Hope this was helpful. You can follow Transplants on Instagram and TikTok at Transplants Podcast, and please be sure to follow and rate 5 stars wherever you listen to your podcasts. So again, thank you so much, Efua, for coming on today, and thank you everyone for listening. Be sure to tune in 2 weeks from now for our next episode, and remember, you're not as alone as you think.